Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Illumineers Quest podcast, where we talk everything Lorcana. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jacob.
And thanks for coming on this journey with us. But a journey it has been this far. So,
Hallelujah.
Right as Jake got here, I got one final request from work for the day. I get to work from home on Fridays, and so he had to wait on me for that. And then we got started, and we put our headphones on to start recording, and there was a massive static in both of our headphones. And we were like, we're going to bash our heads in if we have to listen to this for an hour or however long this episode goes, because we can't take it. And so, we're like an hour late to recording, but better late than never. I guess it doesn't make the episode go out any later. So it's just a fun little tidbit behind the scenes of the podcast for everybody.
It makes it more fun for us, right?
No, not in this case. But yeah, we're going. So today is another, what we're calling another kind of meta report. I think we're kind of in that boat, but given the overall layout of the current atmosphere of Lorcana and the inability for a really centralized location of data like we've had before, I think it's good to just get people up on it. We've had a lot of positive feedback as well from some people giving comments on the episodes, and so we've also come up with a little quick meta update segment for episodes that aren't focused on that we'll be doing going forward every now and then. So with that being said, we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about Vegas. We're going to talk about some of the meta stuff. This is Set Champs week. This weekend is going to be Set Champs, and so there's a lot of stuff to get ready for if you're going to your first Set Champs this weekend, which we both are, and we're both kind of like, what do we do? Let's go ahead and jump right into it. So with that being said, thank you everyone for supporting us. Thank you for everybody for following along and using our TCG Player affiliate link. If you're interested in getting singles, the link can be found in the description box below from wherever you're watching / listening, and helps support the podcast more than anybody can realize. So we appreciate all that. And so let's go jump into it. And we kind of came to a conclusion on the card of the week because of Zan, who I don't guess it's really a spoiler because we're going to talk about it. So, but anyways, so Zan, very, I would say prominent member of the competitive community, had won the DLC in Vegas and did it in in utterly dominant fashion. Yeah. I can't think of one that we've seen was more dominant than this. And so,
well, I think the interesting thing with Zan is he got coverage the entire day, where the other champions have not had coverage. They just get coverage towards the end of the run. So I think Zan's, just by default, because he had more on-screen time, seemed more dominant. But I do think that there is obviously he did it in a...
Well, he went undefeated. Has there been another one that hasn't had a loss? There very well could have been. I don't remember. I mean, and maybe there was in the European Championships, but I can't think of a champion that has I think his record was 11-0-4, and so he hasn't he literally went unscathed. He didn't lose a round. He I think drew not intentionally drew one in Swiss. And then, drew out the rest of Swiss, and then, obviously lost a round or two, I think, throughout his playoff run. But obviously didn't lose any matches. But anyways, we'll get to all that. But we picked a card from his deck because it was obviously a very good deck, and obviously very, I don't want to say outside the meta, because I think there were still people playing this, and we had talked about green steel quite a bit, or maybe not quite a bit, but we had talked about it. We definitely had it low on the meta report last time, which of course that's how it goes. But I think that's how for most people. But anyways, so Ana, the new legendary Ana Diplomatic Queen in Emerald, the 3-cost uninkable, that quest for 2/3 stat line. And we have talked about her, and I had a lot of high praise for that. So I feel like I've, at least got one thing correct at some point down the line.
No, I remember buying a play set.
You did instantly.
Day one.
Yeah.
And I was I don't know, I just love the versatility of this card, which
the flexibility of it is nutty. So again, so her ability says Royal Resolution. When you play this character, you may pay 2 ink to choose one of the following. Each opponent chooses and discards a card. Chosen character gets +2 strength this turn. Banish chosen damage character. So, if you're thinking about going into the more control heavy decks, you can, ping damage something for 1, and then Ana can finish it off. In Zan's version, it was very much another discard tool. Because he was, using a very much discard control, resource control deck in the Emerald Steel version, and then even if you need to take out a location or something, you can throw it down in there, buff something with 2 strength, and help finish off the location. So I think just the versatility that you get from this card is pretty fantastic because, you know, some things have a lot of utility in specific situations, and then you get into a situation where it's not very useful, and so then it becomes hard to play because it's only good in certain situations. And now that you have a card that can do everything across the board, you just gotta get to choose what you want it to do. That's obviously really good.
I mean, it's been just in a few days a little bit of playing with it. The first time, like, it's super fun. Like, it just, you're by turn 5, you're getting value out of it in some shape or form.
Well, that's the way that I think you should think about it. You know, I think when it was initially released, there was a little bit of like, oh, this is cool, and a little bit of like, eh. But just like look at it as a 5-drop. Like, you're not playing this on turn 3. And if you are, you probably should be like thinking about it a little differently. Think about it as a 5 cost that has your choice of on playability, essentially.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very dynamic in that sense that you can do whatever it is that you want to do. And if you want to go into a discard strategy, you go into a discard strategy. If you want to go into, you know, removal strategy, you can go into that. So yeah, it's just super dynamic and super cool. And so yeah, that's a good one to watch out for.
I mean, it is a Emerald Legendary too, so it's a little rare, I guess, but it's super. I mean, I think for the most part, like, I get a lot out of the banish so far. Like, a lot of my other discard tools are doing the job, you know.
Yeah.
I think like the biggest value to me would be that. Like, what would you say is the biggest ability
On the card?
of the 3?
I mean, it depends on your strategy. I mean, for Zan's list, it was obviously the discard because, you know, the whole point was to keep the hand depleted. But then if you're successful in that and they're just top decking every time, then you have the ability to go use it and to banish something. And so honestly, I mean, the versatility of it is the biggest ability, which isn't one on the card, but that's the biggest upside of the card.
I wish you could return a card to hand instead of the 2 strength. Maybe it'd be too powerful at that point.
Yeah.
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 Because that would be like a 2-cost Mother Knows Best, and it's already, you know,
sure,
like that's a 3-cost ability.
Sure.
So I don't know. And I think that the Gothel does that, and I think it costs 3 to do that, which, you know, checks out based on the cost of the action that was already released. So yeah. But anyways, yeah. So that's the card of the week. That's something to keep your eye out on as you're going into set champs. If you're eyeing Emerald, or if you're even playing against Emerald, to be careful that might be coming up. Okay. And so moving on to comments / questions from listeners, kind of already hinted at it, but we have a message from Albin. So thank you for reaching out, Albin. He said, just wanted to reiterate the positive attitude of the podcast and loving the positivity that we all bring week in, week out. And so, yeah, we try to do it. You know, there were definitely critical of things, but I think you can do that in a very, you know, constructive way and not just be like super negative and annoying about it all. And so, yeah, that's kind of the attitude we try to bring week in and week out. And then, yeah, he was the one that kind of, I'm reading through it again so I don't forget anything. He said, good job improving the audio, which I did want to bring up. We kind of already touched on it, but I feel like we keep tweaking the audio levels, and I did it a little bit differently again this time, and I think the audio levels should be even a little bit better this time. So yeah, I think that hopefully, again, we're getting a little bit closer every time. I don't want to like overdo it and then like blow everybody's ears out because it's too loud. And so, yeah, appreciate that. You know, it's good to hear some feedback because we see a lot of negative comments, and I get it. Like, it's not perfect. We're all new to this and we're trying to make it work. But then he also said he would love to see some gameplay of us and talking through our gameplay, kind of like the Lab Rats. Have you seen the Labyrinth videos that they do? Where RMB and Humble play, and they kind of just talk through the mulligan decisions and talk through stuff. I mean, we probably should do that. Like, that's a really good idea because
I don't know if I would be super helpful. Like, I play in a very, maybe not the best way. Like,
well, and to be fair, Jake, we were playing mirror Song matches quite a bit a couple weeks ago when Song was still the bee's knees, and I was like, okay, you're demolishing me. Please tell me your mulligan strategy. He's like, yeah, I don't really know. I just kind of do this and do that. And I was like, okay, cool. That's not a very good strategy. I don't know how you look into beating me every time, but clearly they're having some thoughts that are good because you're beating me nonstop. But anyways, yeah. So appreciate the note, appreciate the kind words. And I guess it was on. I need to pull up Twitter/X real quick because I guess the comment about what we're going to call the mini meta movement, the new segment of the podcast, which we're not going to do this time because that's basically what we're talking about is the meta and a lot of the results from the most recent event, which obviously has a big meta implication. But we did get a comment on X regarding the like meta reports that we did these last couple times, and from Clark, I found it. So thank you, Clark, for that one too. Mini meta segment from Clark. He gave us the idea. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially in today's world again, where there's a lot of fast moving pieces, and if you're not sticking on top of it, and it's a lot harder to do these days, then So those two, appreciate it. Let's just jump into it. I think we've rambled on for long enough now at this point, and there's a lot to talk about. So, Vegas. It was an event. Games were played.
I couldn't believe a lot of it. Like, it blew me away, honestly. Like, if you haven't seen it, like three of the top four were emerald steel.
Which I don't think that's ever happened, where three of the top four have been the same color. I would think that there's a couple where there's been like a couple ruby amethyst, potentially, or maybe a couple. There's never been more like sapphire. Ruby sapphire's never like done like super well.
Maybe Europe.
Maybe emerald steel, like in the Bucky days, there was one of them, but I really don't think so. I think this was the first time, but anyways, we should probably have that stat. But anyways, yes, 3 of the 4 were emerald steel. And that's really, really crazy because, going into it, everybody, or I guess I should say it was flying under everybody's radar.
And apparently there has been, from what I've heard, there has been like a underground community of people playtesting this, the entire set that we haven't heard about.
I think we've said that from the beginning since Pixelborn kind of, got kaput. Is that the teams and the communities of people that have been playing with each other this whole time and have been utilizing their inner circle to continue to test and to push the boundaries. I mean, when you have the best players like getting into a knowledge group like that, you're going to advance a lot. And the problem before is that there were other people doing that online that were posting their success stories with more or less the same things, and then that would shape it just as well. But now we don't have visibility to all that because it's a lot more behind the curtains. Mm-hmm. And so, it doesn't surprise me that there were people that were ahead of the game on this because there's just a lot more secrecy involved in the overall community because the online content creation space has definitely like taken a hit.
For sure. I mean, I also think like there is, I think you can look at that in a somewhat negative way, but I think there's also like a positive way where it's like super fun that a deck can just pop out of nowhere and do stuff. But obviously the competitive side of me is like, yeah, but I'd like to, know ahead of time. Like I'd like to know what the best decks are so I can.
Well, yeah, but that's just made me rethink like my ability as a player and as a, not even a player. Cause I view like there's two sides and I've talked about this before, but there's like the player side and the coach side. And the player side is like, once you sit down at the table to like start your round, like you're the player. And before that, you're like the coach. You're coming up with a strategy, you're devising a plan, you're trying to figure out how to beat your opponents. And I feel like I'm a very good A player. But on the coaching side, all this has done is made me realize that like I'm a D player or a D coach. Like I just don't do a good job. Like I'm very much a chaser of the meta than a leader or a mover of it. And so that's one of the things that I've really come back from Vegas thinking is like, what can I do or how can we regroup and strategize like locally to to advance our scene to try to make sure that we're on top of it. Which, that being said, it's probably a no better time than ever to say we have a new best player in Arkansas. Thank God I don't have to like get annoyed by that everywhere I go anymore because I've said plenty of times I'd never felt it. But shout out Mo. He played a lot with us in set 1 and then kind of got turned off by the product availability like everybody else. And came back 2 weeks ago to the league that I've been playing in and just completely, utterly obliterated in Vegas and made top 8 and got a golden Mickey. So, yeah.
Super crazy.
Yeah, and now we have 2 locally that have made continentals. So, like, it's to the point now where we can say, like, our local scene is, like, on the top tier.
We have a third. That's going to Continentals.
I don't think Nick's 100% confirmed yet.
He got the invite, I heard.
From who? Because there hasn't been any invites sent out.
Oh.
I have not gotten anything yet. There have been no invites sent.
Then I got misinformed because I was told that you also got your invite.
That is incorrect.
Oh, wow.
I have placed in a tournament high enough to get an invite. I have not received any communication around said invite.
I have been misinformed.
So, but with that said, so Mo's going, and we have 3 others that have finished top 32 of it. So like, that's a really solid group of people, like all playing here locally and our set champs, like fun for the rest of us. Right. But, yeah, congrats Mo. It was super crazy to see him. Unfortunately, he was like never on stream, and the way in like the area that everybody was playing at that wasn't on stream was like behind a closed door. I mean, it wasn't behind a closed door, but it was behind curtains, and like you couldn't really see what was going on. And so we basically were following Melee and like trying to find, everybody around. It's like, what's going on? What's going on? And it's really not. He just kept winning and winning and winning. And so it was really awesome. And we're going to try to get him on the podcast in the next week or so to get his perspective. And, he's, like I said, he's new back to the game. And so he has a very different mind for it than we do. I think just his play style is very different too. And so it's, it's always fun to hear somebody else, especially someone that good in their perspective. So
sure.
Shout out Mo. It was really fun to be on the bandwagon cheering you on the whole time because, it just came out of nowhere. We weren't necessarily expecting that. And I don't think he was expecting it either. I mean, obviously he wanted to go and have a good time and, got back into it because he got his invite to Vegas or got his ticket to Vegas. And that's kind of what sparked him to get back into it. But yeah, so super excited for Mo. Shout out Mo. Glad you could do it. He's started a Twitter and a YouTube now, and he did a deck profile on his YouTube channel. So I think it's Mo Shamlin. I think that's like his handle on YouTube and Twitter. So yeah, go give him a follow and check that out because he was playing Emerald Amethyst and did a fantastic job on the bounce tempo stuff. So so that's another like little kind of side tidbit there, I guess, going on, talking about kind of the decks coming out of nowhere, which, now the reason we're doing this episode is to prepare for that type of environment, which we're currently in. But before we get into that, there's one other like side note we have to talk about, and that is the scandal.
We're bringing it up.
Well, you have to. I mean, it's a massive story.
Okay.
It's a massive. How can you not talk about it?
I mean, I'm surprised we're bringing it up, honestly.
Why?
I just didn't think we would. Like, I think it's enough out there to where we don't need to bring it up necessarily, but...
Nope, it's the biggest scandal that's ever hit the game, so you got to talk about it.
All right, let's do it.
The second place finisher in Fort Worth, Texas, got accused 3 times of drawing too many cards off of triggers and got DQ'd from the event. So don't be out there cheating, folks, because it's not worth it. And I don't even mean like not that. Like you just obviously you shouldn't do it. Like it's just like there's an integrity to the game, and I guess as a player, I want to be the best by the rules of the game and beat my opponent fair and square. But I have more details of the situation that I know you don't have. So Mo, who we just mentioned, was sitting next to him the first round that he was caught and warned, and guess who he was playing?
Who was he playing?
Zan. So you're telling me that you're not only going to cheat, but on top of that, you're going to do it against one of the most ruthless players in the game that's definitely going to be on top of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like that is just mind-boggling. And on top of that, DeCandio put it best. This isn't the first time he cheated. This is the first time he got caught.
Yeah.
Like he 100% has to lose his invite to nationals. Like that, like if that doesn't happen, I will be absolutely shocked and appalled because there's just no place for that in our game. Like, this is a very fun, loving community, and there are a lot of prizes and there is a lot of money involved at the end of the day, but it boils down to the love of the game still. Like if I didn't love playing the game and I didn't love the strategy and I didn't love the community and the interactions with our local scene and all the friends that have come along the way and all of that, like I just wouldn't be playing anymore. And so I just can't fathom that type of behavior. It's just mind blowing.
I think the biggest thing that it comes down to is just respect. Like,
yeah, for sure. You're absolutely right. Like respect the game, respect your opponent, respect the community, respect the integrity of the event. Like it's just, it's wild. But shout out to the event handlers. They obviously took care of the situation. We're very on top of it. Shout out to Zan for catching him because to be completely honest, I don't think if my opponent were to do that, like I pay enough attention to how many they're drawing and what all's going on. I mean, I'm paying attention to a lot of like the plays that are happening and the triggers and everything like that. But there's definitely things I think people could get away with. And so that's just, kind of a wake up call to, if you are playing in those big events to really like be on top of your game and make sure that your opponent's being at the, above board with all the stuff that they're doing.
But I mean, I think the biggest thing with this individual specifically is like we know who it is. So if their invite does not get, I would hope their invite gets. What word am I looking for here?
Canceled, revoked. I don't know. I mean, there's a bunch of rescinded. There's a bunch of words you can use, but
I mean, if it doesn't, all the eyeballs will be on them.
Yeah, for sure. But anyways, yeah, we had to say that too because I mean, it wasn't just like some random person. It was if that were the case, then it'd be like okay, whatever. Like this happens from time to time. But the fact that they had an invite and the fact that they did it next to Mo, who then after the round was just telling us the story about it. And then later on in the day, we heard that same person got disqualified. And then we come to find out later that Mo didn't know who Zan was. That's the funniest part is at the time, he had no idea who Zan was. He was just like, this guy clearly just wants to win too bad. And then afterwards, and he was in the top 8 with Zan, obviously he's like, oh, okay, I know who this guy is now. And he clearly wasn't just trying to, to make it annoying for his opponent. He clearly like knew what he was doing and was just trying to keep the game in a correct state. And so anyways, I don't want to go on and on about it, but I just my end thoughts are there's no place for it in the game. Please play with integrity, and if it does happen, then you deserve to lose your spot and you deserve to be banned. So
also, if you do plan cheating, don't do it against Zan.
Yeah, I will 100% say that. If you're playing somebody that really understands the game and is really paying attention to the resources and constantly counting out your hand, the one thing I will say I did this time very well is every time my opponent told me like they're questing or whatever, and I was writing down on my pad their current lore total, I would say out loud, I was like, okay, questing for 2 to I've got you at 12 now. Mm-hmm. And so that we would always confirm. And actually one time we were off by 1 and it wasn't like he was something malicious thing. I don't remember what it was, but he would like wrote it into the wrong column accidentally or whatever. But so it wasn't a big deal and it didn't change anything in the game. But mistakes, careless mistakes or, harmless mistakes do happen too. And so the more you can do to keep the game state in a common place between you and your opponent, obviously, is going to be better for everybody in the long run too. But
that's not something we want to cause, like by saying that there is, scandals out there, I guess. But like, there's people that just, including myself, that just make common, mistakes. Like that isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah,
it can be fixed.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they're, like apologetic about it or whatever, it's very clear. But anyways, okay, so meta. The meta share of the total event, I think, is basically what we'd expected it to be. The number 1 deck being Ruby Sapphire. I think a lot of people going in thought it would be Steel Song, but I think as we came out of the 10K and the 2K that DeCandio did, came in first and second in, and we got closer to Vegas, we started to realize that hey, there's especially with Ruby Sapphire on the rise and that being the biggest deterrent to Steel Song. There's probably people that are going to be shifting away from Steel Song. And then I think behind closed doors, again, as you said, a lot of people were testing and figuring out that Emerald Steel kind of, dumps on Steel Song as well. And so then there was even more of that people shifted away to it. And so, Ruby Sapphire was number 1, Steel Song was number 2, which were the 2 big ones that we kind of knew that would be the case. And then you get, kind of go on to the tier 2, but yet still really good decks. Your Emerald Amethyst Tempo, your Lemon Lime Under the Sea, and then your Emerald Steel. And I don't remember the exact order of those, but those are like the next, tier of like really well represented decks. And all of those did extremely well, and I would say were the best performance as far as like a share of the event compared to the share of the top cut. Both Steel Song and Ruby Sapphire like underperformed. If they were like Ruby Sapphire was like 30% of the event and Song was like 22% of the event. And so, theoretically, if they were performing at average, they should have a 30% and 22% share of the top cut. And both of them were under their fair share of that, which means they underperformed in general, which doesn't shock me too much given the, a lot of the developments that we had seen. Mo playing Emerald Amethyst in the past couple weeks at League really opened my eyes to some new play styles that had, kind of flown under the radar for this set. And so that helped me a ton because had I not played that before going in, I would have just been like blown away when it happened. But yeah, I also think that Steel Song, like incredibly, incredibly underrepresented, like in general. I think there were, like the hardcore players that are still pretty good with the deck and can still, make their way through some lines and, come out on top. But I didn't see a Steel Song match the entire day. And so, I was towards the top. I was in the top like 200 for the vast majority of the day, or top 300, I think, for the vast majority of the day. And I didn't, at like round one, there was one in every matchup on the table. And then round two, there was a couple matchups. And then round three, there was like, you'll find one on your entire table. Mm-hmm. And so I think, again, this is just a conjecture because I don't know, but in general, I think it very underperformed for the vast majority of the population of people playing it because I just didn't see it much at the top tables.
Yeah, I think another thing too, like we've seen kind of a falling off, but not necessarily like, a fall, but like a falling off from where they were of Steel Song and Ruby Amethyst. I'd add in there too from a falling off point where like,
oh yeah, Ruby Amethyst was up there. Ruby Amethyst was the third most represented deck. I've completely forgot that one. I don't know how it did, but of course it was very well played as well. That has a incredibly loyal following, obviously also. So
it's kind of like interesting and really cool to see just like the rise of like these new decks, like a falling off point for Emerald Steel and Ruby Amethyst, like our two pillars from the very beginning of the game, the meta of the game, and now kind of seeing a changing of the guard almost.
Yeah, I think so. I think there have been. I think you can start to call them staples. Under the sea, the lemon lime under the sea deck has been around for closing in on 4 or 5 months now. Mm-hmm. That's getting into the place where it's like showing that it has some staying power. I think at the beginning of each of these sets, people try some crazy stuff to try, to find like, a gimmick, I guess is the best way to put it, that like kind of hacks the meta real fast and, wins a bunch of games real quick. But then people figure it out and realize it's not as good as it is. And so then it gets kind of
which Under the Sea started as that. It started as a gimmicky thing.
A little bit, yeah.
That was just kind of like a one-off, like, hey, let's try this for the first week of the set, and now it's became solidified and optimized and has really come into its own.
Yeah, I tried to build one way back when, and I could never get it to work because, again, I'm not a good coach. I'm just a decent player. But yeah, so Under the Sea still definitely needs to be dealt with. Let me take a step back, I guess. So that's kind of the meta share. I think in general, you need to be going into set champs, going into Seattle. If you're going to be in Seattle, you have to be much more aware of Emerald. Like Emerald has proven that it did not die with Bucky. Bucky might have changed or gone away, but in general, the strategies that were evolved around that revolved around Bucky are still very much in play and still very, very good. They just have a new face, and that face is back to Prince John.
Emerald Steel, Emerald Amethyst, Emerald Amber, like Emerald, and those are three of the top decks, maybe even top three. Like I don't.
No, I think Ruby Sapphire will still have like the top share, and I still think it has like the most power, and I think it has the most. Maybe not the most, but it has a lot of tools that can like reshape itself into the current meta to deal with a lot of these new threats, if you will. So I think that's still probably one of the top ones. Anytime you have a real control-y type deck like that, that can just like utterly change the dynamic of the game, it's going to have a lot of power and a lot of representation. And the top end of that deck is better than any other deck. And so all it has to do is weather the early storm. And it has the tools to do that. You just have to kind of shape it right into the current matchup.
Sure.
But yeah, so I think that will definitely be one. I think Emerald will definitely be up. I would say the share of Emerald in total, so like Lemon, Lime, and Tempo, will be higher than any other deck. And so like the share of Emerald, and then Emerald Steel, obviously.
Yep.
I think those three will be like the biggest representation piece of the pie. Meaning you have to be very ready to play against Emerald, where I don't think most people were really like, I don't want to say teching, but weren't really in a position where they were worried about that before.
Absolutely. I agree. Like, I just think like, I don't know, for me personally, like it's been somewhat stressful, like, but also another part of it has been super fun and exciting. Like with all these new play lines and like decks coming into their own and really, really figuring out what they are.
Yep.
Like it's been stressful to figure out what I'm gonna
Oh,
play.
it's been very stressful for me too.
But it's just been also like super exciting to see it.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, like a lot of the new cards seeing play, like that I wasn't expecting. Like Anna, for example, I thought, after a while, it was like, okay, she's never gonna see play. And then like, I think you and me a little bit were low on Clarabelle when she was like first revealed. Like, surely this isn't gonna be that big of a deal. And like, it's just cool, like to see these certain cards and new decks just come in their own and really see play.
Yeah, I mean, what's the best way to put this? The openness of the potential for something to do good and catch people off guard is way higher than it's ever been.
Absolutely.
And so, there's definitely, like I said, a position of like chasing the current meta. There will definitely be people in Seattle and in set champs that are copying Zan's list and just running with it and calling it good. I think what was proven the most to me in Vegas is that the top players / teams, as we said, are all testing behind closed doors. And I guarantee you, Zan right now has already dumped that 60 card deck and is moving on to his next thing.
I could not agree more.
Because he's smart enough to understand that, okay, he's set the standard and people are going to be following that standard and he's going to move on to what's best next. And so that's the way I'm trying to frame up my mindset, is to just be like an overall, really good hitter into what we expect to see, evolving into, and I was very behind the curve on this one. Like I knew Ruby Sapphire and Steel Song would be the biggest things. And my game plan going in was to, face potentially 2 or 3 Steel Song matches and then just, ride the coattails of those matches. And I, unfortunately, like I said, didn't get a single one. And so that I think really hurt me overall, just, getting a quick win, getting to the top tables and really then, knowing what to expect. And I just, was never able to like cross that hump and like really get into the winner's bracket kind of like I did in Fort Worth. But so I think Anna is, one of those, like you said, that's, kind of like a watch out cards that people didn't necessarily expect, but is definitely like going to be on the rise. There's another way to like look at it is like the TCG player, like marketplace, costs of cards and stuff. I mean, Beast Tragic Hero had dropped below, like I want to say like $33. It was in like that realm, which is like by far the lowest we've ever seen that card. Diablo had dropped below 30, like I think significantly below 30, like into the like 25, 26-ish range. Ursula Deceiver was, I don't want to say pennies, but it's, an uncommon. And so it was like very, very, very cheap. Ursula Deceiver of all the legendary was definitely like mid-teens, like 14, 15. And all of those are like massively on the rise now. They're all staples in Zan's deck. They all had, a big share of other Emerald Steel decks as well. And so all of those staples have risen drastically, which to me says a bunch of people are picking up the most important cards of that deck and they plan on playing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's, like you said, it's a huge like data point to use.
It really is. It really is. Because there's, that's... I mean, that's just the indicator of what's important or what's on the top of people's mind. And it's really funny because after day one, I said Bivens was going to win. I was like, I was able to catch a couple of his matches on day one and he went unscathed. Like he literally played like he was 5-0, could have drawn out, called it good. But he was like, no, I'm playing the 6th round and I'm going to win and get the first seed. And that's what he did. And so I was like, if you have that big of a confidence in yourself currently, and you're the number 1 seed, going to have, the advantage of going first every round. Like I have a lot of confidence in you to go do that. And so unfortunately, he wasn't able to pull it out. And I really, unfortunately, because I do think he's one of the best players in the game. I really want to see him have some success because I've never heard anything but like fantastic things about him too, which is really cool to see. That's somebody that's, like one of the forefront faces of your community. It's a fantastic person and a great player. And so I was rooting for him. But then once he got bumped out, the guy that beat him was playing Zan in the next round, which we kind of talked about before we jumped on. And that's the first game that I caught at the venue. They had a really cool like viewing area set up for the live games that were going on. And just watching his plays, I was like, he's got it. Like this is over. Like I really said it I was like, he's gonna win. There's nobody that can counter him. And sure enough, he really, the first game of the finals was just like bonkers good.
Oh, it was, I mean, how long, like, did someone time it? Like how long it went?
I know the full thing took an hour, like the full match, like took in like an hour and 5 minutes. But I would bet that match of that hour and 5 minutes was probably 45 of it, because that second game was fast.
Yeah. I mean, it was so long that Zan asked for a break,
Yeah.
which was, I mean, well warranted, I believe. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it was a slug. Like, it was a very, very, like, the mental warfare there was insane.
no, I mean, I think we can speak to that, like, personally, like the mental toll this game can take on you at a certain point is
It's high.
It's
sure.
high, yeah.
But anyways, yeah. So I was very much high on the Zan train. I just think that once I saw what he was doing and how he was playing and understood his strategy a little bit, I was like, yeah, there's nothing that can stop him. Which brings me to my next point. I think the best card in the game right now, and I hate to say there's no argument, because there's always an argument, but I really do feel like the most unchecked card in the game is Prince John, like easily, because he's hard to remove. He's hard to deal with. He not only has a benefit for you, but it also has a negative effect against your opponent. And so not only are you benefiting your own game and your own match, but you're also hurting your opponents. And when you're able to do that, it's really hard to recover from.
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think here. I mean, Ward, we've talked about it again and again. Ward is
The most important thing in the game right now.
yeah, I mean, and I don't necessarily see that ever changing. Like,
There has to be some sort of mechanic or item or something that
goes through it.
Like, yeah, that deals with it. I mean, attacking readied characters is the biggest thing right now that can deal with it. But that's like very few and far between with that ability. And so I mean, maybe that's the route they take. Maybe there's more characters like Arthur on when you play this character, you can grant another character the ability to attack a ready character or something. And I think that helps out a lot. But the Ursula into the Prince John combo is just devastating, because Ursula not only discards something, then can sing Sudden Chill the next turn to discard something else that then John can draw off of, but she's also sniping out the most important songs, which are the only things that can deal with him.
Yeah.
Be Prepared and Grab Your Sword are the only two real things that can be that are like meta viable, that have ever like really truly been played, aside from Cinderella Stouthearted, but that's like way too late in the game to even consider at this point.
I'd say I'd add Under the Sea in there too, I think.
Again, very late in the game, yes, Under the Sea. I mean, you're not playing it until turn 5 at least.
But with Ariel Spectacular Singer?
I mean, I guess that's possible, but again, like, you're most likely going to need, so turn 4 at the earliest, and if you're Under the Sea on turn 4 and you're getting a Prince John and a Diablo, like, yeah, I guess you're getting some value. But the point I'm trying to make is the two most like direct, easy to I mean, Under the Sea gets sniped by Ursula too. So if you pull Under the Sea off of Ariel and then your plan is to then play it, then they just play an Ursula or a Pete and keep you from doing that, and then it doesn't matter. So anyways, point is that I think John is the hardest one to deal with. I think it was a very insane meta call, because he knew that most people were off Grab Your Swords, and most of the Steel Song players were off Grab Your Swords. He knew that Sapphire Steel had an extremely low meta share, and so there, you weren't going to run into many Grab Your Swords there, if any at all. I'm sure he didn't see one the entire day. I think there was only like 60 players that brought it. So I do foresee a massive resurgence of Grab Your Swords because of Prince John. But that still begs the question on how you get that off, meaning how are you able to actually like use or /sing the card because of Pete / Ursula. It just has like the full combo package on like the biggest things that can deal with him, have direct counters and the subsequent turns that they have. And then they get value for playing them too. I mean, Ursula is, very high on my list of like top cards in the game right now as well.
The combo of Emerald Steel being able to play Ursula and Pete is absolutely disgusting. Like, it's unbelievable.
Ursula, I mean, just like everything that you play the first couple turns, like, demands an answer. If you shift Diablo, you have to answer Diablo or the game runs away. Prince John demands an answer relatively quickly, or they discard your whole hand. They get a hand 10 times the size of yours, and they run away with the game. Beast Tragic Hero demands an answer very fast, or runs away with the game.
Which is something else that Zan did. He played Morph and shifted Beast.
And we hadn't even gotten to Morph yet, but yeah, Morph demands an answer, which seems crazy, but demands an answer because it can turn into a Beast or a Tinkerbell.
Muses put in that list as well.
Muses demands an answer. Tinkerbell demands an answer. Like everything he's playing, like you can't just let sit there, especially the card draw. I mean, there's so many card draw options that's like really changed my mindset on you can't just have one card draw engine in a game anymore. You have to have like 4. So that if your first one gets stifled or the one that you want to go with gets stifled, that you have a backup plan to be able to draw. You can't just play A Whole New World and steal songs because Ursula snipes it and you're under the sea for, I thought that was a good, I mean, not a very good pun, but you get what I'm trying to say. Like you're out of luck at that point. And so you have to have redundancies in your card draw at this point.
With Zan's list specifically, and you could tell this by watching, like if he had 2 to 3 turns of control of the game, it's done. Like completely over. Like game, set, match.
Yeah, and the ability for like muses to bounce your own Ursula to then just like replay to say like, hey, sorry, I know you got a song in your hand. I'm just going to take it.
Yeah.
It's nutty. And you can, even, on turn 6, you can play the muses and Ursula. And then on turn 7, you can play a song, bounce Ursula, replay it again. Like you're not ever going to really get anything of value off. And so that's why that one's so hard to play against, is because, again, just like I said in the Bucky days, like anytime you have an ability that creates an annoyance for your opponent, which discarding their hand, as I would say, put it lightly, is much more than an annoyance, and benefits you, that's very, very hard to defeat, especially that early on in the game. I think that's the biggest benefit of it, is that it happens very early on. I would say something else that falls into that camp would be Sisu. And Sisu has shown to be a massive impact on the game. The difference is that there's no way that comes down earlier than turn 6 because it's such a massive card that it's hard to get that value early game. And so while it is impactful and does make that, big of a one-sided board wipe, a massive, benefit for you, a huge detriment to your opponent, it doesn't happen near as often because it's so late in the game.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been from the very beginning, Lorcon. If you're able to build somewhat of an early engine game,
there's so much about card draw and finding rabbits, or finding, your friends on the other side, or finding your Flavershams, or dealing with your opponent's Flaversham. It's very difficult. So, Emerald is just insanely difficult to deal with right now because, if you're playing on the draw and you're having to go behind and answer their questions, it's okay, I have to answer their Diablo. And then it's okay, I have to answer their Prince John. And then it's okay, I have to answer their Beast Tragic Hero. And then it's okay, I have to answer their Tinkerbell. There's like very few places for you to step in and like take over the game because they're constantly putting out threats that are just really hard to deal with.
And I mean, I'm sure you remember talking about this, but like set 1 and 2, like it was always like, okay, Emerald has the best singular cards, but in no way do they, like, it doesn't gel well. And then all it needed was, Ursula's and Diablos, and you're good to go.
I mean, Ursula's definitely started the train, obviously, but I think the real thing that pulled it together was Diablo, just because that's, a very, very reliable card draw engine that Emerald hadn't had. They had some card draw options, but it was very like hit or miss, and you were usually getting your card draw from the color pairing that you were pairing it with. In set 1, it was very much, friends on the other side. And so, Diablo like changed the game.
I couldn't agree more. Like, it was one of those things that's like, like the ability's insane and it has evasive good, but like it just is going to get removed. And that's kind of the point. Like, remove it, like, I will say this, we're kind of, I think it's to the point where we can start like wrapping this up a little bit, but so, the whole point of this discussion was to try to get you ready for set champs, try to help you all understand, where the meta's going, what to expect at some of the more, prestigious, I guess, tournaments that are coming up in the near future. Diablo, Prince John, Ursula, I think those are the 3 big ones I would really like to call out from Emerald. I mean, everybody obviously knows those 3 cards,
But if you don't have a strategy that's going to deal with those 3 cards, then you're not going to have a good time. You have to be ready to deal with it. You have to have a game plan going into that matchup, and you have to be in a position to deal with those cards when they come out, or that momentum will really start to build, and it will, snowball, and then you'll not be able to catch up.
If there's one thing you take away from this, if there's one singular ink you study getting ready for set champs, it is 100% Emerald Lake.
Yeah, I mean, especially given that I think most people had kind of ignored it up until this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are the big Emerald ones. I think aside from that, you're still going to see a lot of Ruby Sapphire. I mean, everybody probably knows their local scene pretty well if they're taking this set champs pretty seriously. And so I would there might not have been a bunch of people on like Emerald Steel before, but you might know their propensity to be likely to switch. So maybe nobody wants to switch, and maybe it isn't that big of a deal. Maybe everybody's locked into the decks they're playing, and they're not going to switch for the local stuff, and it's cool. And then you don't really have to. But I think for our meta, I think there's like 4 or 5 people I can think of that are very likely to switch, and so we're gonna very much have to be ready for that. And then Ruby Sapphire will 100% be around. Don't expect that to go anywhere. Expect that to continue to be a big problem. I think the top end of that is just bar none, and it's really hard to deal with. And I think that the ability to reset the board is going to be a very big boon to that deck to continue. I think Visions of the Future is one of the top 3 cards in the set.
Yeah,
and
one of the best cards in the game.
Yeah, that really enables you to find the answer that you need. So if you're at 9 ink, go find your B prep and clear the board.
Yeah, I mean, Visions of the Future. I don't understand how, like, we didn't catch on to that card sooner. Like,
yeah, we learn. We're just a little behind the curve again. Good players, not good coaches. So
yeah, let's go with that.
So Ruby Sapphire is definitely one to continue to watch out for. Visions of the Future is definitely one to keep your eye out on. Steel Song, honestly, I've racked my brain trying to understand a way where it can kind of remain viable, but between Pete and the Ursulas, I just really don't see a way where it can continue to be consistently at the high level. Ursulas are going to take all the important songs out of your hands. Prince John can't be targeted, and then you're going to get peated to not be able to reset the board with a whole new world or grab your swords or whatever. And then, you're going to come in and get double discarded by Ursula Deceiver of All. And so there's just too many answers when the vast majority of your game plan revolves around singing those songs, when Emerald Steel and Lemon Lime's entire game plan is to take all of those out of your hands. Like, there's just too many that their entire strategy is to just remove all of that. And so it remains really hard from that respect, especially when the biggest advantage that you had was Ariel finding those songs. Well, now they know you got it, and you can't play it till next turn, most likely, especially if it's like a whole new world, and then you're kind of just going to get ripped.
Yeah.
So I would still be on the watch out for like an aggro-ish Steel Song, just because I think that, there are going to be very, again, loyal players that are going to want to play it and going to bring it, and they have the cards for it, and so that's what they're going to do. But I don't think it's the biggest thing to worry about anymore. Emerald Amethyst Tempo, talked about that one in the Emerald realm. That one might see a little bit of a drop because of all the Emerald Steel upticks, which I think has a very strong matchup into Emerald Amethyst. But, I think, again, shout out Mo, proved that he can, do really well in an overall, large tournament setting, and, has a lot of success. So I think you'll still continue to see a lot of those, especially when you have Artabax, the grandfather of the deck, continuing to push forward with the deck. Lemon Lime kind of touched on that one with some of the Steel Song stuff. I imagine that you'll see a Sapphire Steel resurgence with the Prince John, the Diablos, the Emerald Steels of the world. Sapphire Steel, I think, has the best early game tools to deal with it and to ramp. With your Fire the Cannons, your Babooms, your Smashes, your Grab Your Swords, your Whole New Worlds, and then all of the Sapphire draw and ramp tools. It has the best package to deal with all those early game threats and to try to keep your board clear so that you can get to the late game. So I still don't think it's necessarily the best deck, but I'm definitely like back on the testing train on Sapphire Steel because I'm very comfortable with it, and I think it does have the tools to deal with a large percent of the meta share. And so I think there's something to be said about all of that. So kind of where we started, but it's a wide open meta, and you just have to be ready for everything. But We also have a bonus episode coming out Thursday. If you're listening on to this on the week it came out, getting ready for Set Champs Week, we're going to have one talking about the most impactful cards of each ink type to be on the lookout for. In those matchups, in the way that you can like kind of think around it and try to play around the those cards, because they can like really shift the game if you're not in a position to deal with whatever threat's coming. And so, we want to talk about some of the most important cards of each of the inks. But yeah, I think that kind of covers it for this one. Man, it's a whirlwind. There's a lot that happened in Vegas. I guess I didn't say this either, but I think for those that follow me on Twitter/X, I lost my deck before round 8, and so I didn't even get to play the last 2 rounds, which I was still in let it go contention at that point. But luckily I did get it back. I don't know, I saw a couple times throughout the day that the judges were like running left dex boxes back to like the lost and found area to keep for people, and they would do it like right after the round. They would like scan the tables, people would get up, the table would clear out, they'd go grab everything real fast and run it over there. So the second I realized that, I ran over there and it wasn't there. And so I was like, great, somebody took it, and, the judge didn't get it, whatever. But like 2.5 hours, like 2.5 hours later, it did show up over there. And so again, I missed the last 2 rounds. Honestly, don't even care. Just very happy to have my cards back. Very happy that, I ended the day on a positive note, but didn't have the results I wanted up to that point. So that's a little disappointing, but, very big teaching moment, and had a lot of fun in Vegas, and, glad to take the learnings onto Seattle and Set Champs at this point. So, any final thoughts before we close this one out?
No, I think it's just it's a very exciting and like thrilling time in Lorcana right now. We're like, and again, it is a little stressful, but like it can be. It's wide open, and there's an excitement there, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if anybody has any questions or has anything that they would like to answer, I think this is the perfect time. Reach out to us on Twitter or email us, and we'll try to get you some advice going into your Set Champs. I mean, I'm not a pro level coach by any means, but I also feel like I'm a decent player at this point, and can understand the metagame in a decent way to help people out. So I'd love to help anybody if they have any questions. But best of luck to everybody in Set Champs for their first weekend. Starting October 5th, I think it is. And we'll follow up with everyone throughout the month and let everyone know how we're doing, and continue to update everybody on the meta reports and things like that as we get closer to Seattle. And we will catch you all next time.
Bye, guys.